Big new update just dropped for Black Myth Wukong. Let's get into it.
How's it going, everyone? Want to go over a pretty interesting note that's been made and this attention that this Content Ventures team over at Sony is getting. I think it's really cool that they do have a Content Ventures team, and it looks like they've been involved with securing some relatively important deals for PlayStation, as well as supporting with the release of other games coming from outside of America and other titles being released over here. But right off the bat, I do want to talk that PlayStation is giving a lot of support to a plethora of games. One notable title is Black Myth Wukong, spotted by Gaming Bolt's new interview with Phil Rosenberg, SVP of Global Partner Development at Relations at Sony Interactive Entertainment, revealed details about third-party games receiving support from PlayStation. Rosenberg first stated that the Content Ventures team at Sony is excellent at identifying new franchises and bring them on. They have discovered games like Stray, Genshin Impact, Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, and more. Rosenberg added that there's nobody better in the world than Christian Svensson and Sean Benson at finding these hidden gems and nurturing up-and-coming companies that are usually very difficult to find. I think it's pretty important that they do have a team that's involved in doing something like.
Oh, it's a very good thing that they got a team to find them, because Sony had a gold mine with Black Myth Wukong, and they didn't even have to pay to have it exclusive on theirs. Xbox just had a crappy system that the game developer was like, nah, we're not going to work that hard to sit there and put it out on that console. So Xbox literally handed Sony a free timed exclusive. Good job there, Xbox.
Is because Sony was involved with Stellar Blade pretty early on. Black Myth Wukong is such an interesting game because I don't think anyone knows what actually went on with this game on it not releasing on Xbox. So my belief is that the reasoning of this game not coming to Xbox is the fact that the Series S has some hardware limitations, and it could be real. I get that a lot of people are saying, oh, X developer was able to port this game to Xbox, the Series S isn't a limitation. Guys, not every development studio is created equally. Just because one development studio finds it relatively easy to find their game easy to port onto the Xbox Series S, and that's rather impressive, doesn't mean another studio is gonna find it similarly. Game Science, it's not like they have this plethora of game development experience in their back catalog where they've made big budget console titles. I think this false equivalency is just an issue across the board. Just because a lot of developers, and credit to them, have utilized the Series S doesn't mean that Black Myth Wukong, which is a game that has issues on the base PlayStation 5, bear that in mind as well.
Nah, GameCross, you're being a little too generous. Like, we all know the real reason why they didn't do it. They didn't see any value in releasing it on Xbox. You know, because we all know Sony has been whooping Xbox ass when it comes to selling the consoles. So when you sit there and look at how many consoles the Xbox sold compared to PlayStation, it was a no-brainer. They're like, why, you know, and it is very well known that the limitations on the Xbox hardware, it makes it more difficult for game developers to create those games for their consoles. But they're like, why? Why were we going to go through all this trouble, do this extra work, cost us more money? They probably could have sat there and made more money releasing it on the Xbox, but they're like, why? Nah, we're just going to do it for Steam and or PC and Sony. And guess what? They made a killing. They did good. They didn't have to release it on Xbox. That's why Xbox is in the situation it is. They're in some serious trouble.
That doesn't mean that game didn't have issues of being ported to the Series S. It could be that, hey, PlayStation supported Black Myth Wukong, and the Game Science team looked at the Series S and were thinking, this looks like an absolute headache to get onto the Series S. Is it possible? Maybe. But maybe they just realized, hey, Sony is helping us out. We don't have to release this game on Xbox. I don't know. That's just all pure speculation, but we've never been told anything definitively. However, this idea that PlayStation has this exclusivity agreement with Black Myth Wukong, I don't think that's the case. Just because if there was an exclusivity agreement, I would be shouting that from the rooftops. I would be making that well known. I'd be promoting PlayStation around Black Myth Wukong, and that really wasn't done. Look at what was done with Stellar Blade and how that game was promoted on PlayStation versus Black Myth Wukong. Did Black Myth Wukong get promoted by PlayStation a little bit? Yeah, but not to the extent that Stellar Blade was. Now, Stellar Blade was a PlayStation published game as well. Black Myth Wukong was not that. There can be agreements in a wide variety of different ways, and there were rumors about Black Myth Wukong being limited as far as its release, not releasing on Xbox due to an exclusivity deal. However, Microsoft did note that the delay, and that's what they noted, that the Xbox version was delayed, was not due to platform limitations. And then earlier this year, the founder and CEO of Game Science did note that the Xbox port for Black Myth Wukong didn't arrive due to optimization issues on the Series S. That was...
Yeah, and in this situation, we're going to go for a hearsay. Xbox never sat there and gave the definitive reason, and then the people who made Black Myth Wukong did sit there and say it was due to the limitations. But let's say, for argument's sake, that Nintendo and them did sign a timed exclusive agreement, it would have been almost up by now. Okay, we would have heard word about it coming to Xbox by now. So no, I don't think that's what it is. I just don't think they wanted to go through the trouble of excuse me, I don't think they wanted to go through the trouble of putting it on the Xbox.
Literally said, is that being used as an excuse? I don't know. You guys, I already see these conspiracy theories being made up. It's just like, what do you want me to do? What I will say is, I thought 2024 was a very lackluster year for PlayStation as far as exclusives go, but guess what? Black Myth Wukong was legit one of the biggest game releases in all of 2024, and how Microsoft could fumble getting that game on their platform for whatever reason, whether it be an exclusivity deal, whether it be this, that, whatever, it was legitimately one of the biggest game releases of 2024, and it being a de facto PlayStation console exclusive, if it is because of Series S optimization, that is a gigantic L for them, especially where 2024 would have been a year for them to look at PlayStation output and be like, okay, let's have a strong year, and then you're just giving them free exclusives, or at least free console exclusives like Black Myth Wukong. That's just a significant L and a loss, just because of how big the game is. Now, Foresight wouldn't have told us that Black Myth Wukong was going to be this juggernaut behemoth game that it was, but I feel like it was relatively easy to assess that it was going to be a big game, and I would question, we saw this with Baldur's Gate 3 as well. Baldur's Gate 3 was kind of a PlayStation console exclusive for a little bit. Now, it came out on PC first, and then it got a delayed release on PlayStation 5, and a game like Baldur's Gate 3 is just not going to resonate with a console audience like Black Myth Wukong was going to do. I would say Black Myth Wukong, as far as it being linked to the Series S, being the reason...
Now, I knew that Black Myth Wukong was going to do well. That one I did know. When I sat there, I kept seeing how excited people were for it. I kept hearing so many people talking about it. And then when we found out that this is what inspired one of our favorite animes of all time, Dragon Ball, oh, you knew damn well this game was going to do well. Now, Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I will sit there and say, I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3 because I just don't have the time. That game is too damn long. I have not come to the terms to play it, and I'm kind of waiting for it to go down in price a little bit more. I know I'm going to be waiting for a decade for that to happen, probably. But eventually, I will sit there and get into Baldur's Gate 3. I just don't know how I'm going to feel about the battling, because I love the first two Baldur's Gates. And this one, how they changed the battling, I just don't know if I'm going to like that. But I knew that Black Myth Wukong was going to do phenomenally well. Maybe I didn't think it was going to do that well, but I knew it was going to be a success.
For its Xbox delay is the biggest L the Series S has taken and given to Microsoft. Ultimately, it's not the end of the world, it's inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but if this persists to be an issue, that is certainly something to consider. At the end of the day, I think most games are going to be able to be optimized for the Series S, and you've seen some pretty remarkable games end up being able to be ran on the Series S. I think even with a Black Myth Wukong, my speculation and my assessment of the situation is if that game science sat down and really did look at the Series S optimization and the Xbox release as a #1 priority or a top-level priority for them, they would have gotten the game prioritized on the Series S. If the Series S was this incredibly popular platform, I think they would have gotten it optimized on the Series S. However, it's just not that big, and you're gonna release it on PlayStation. It's gonna do juggernaut numbers on PC. I feel like they just looked at the Xbox release and just decided, hey, this isn't that big of a deal right now. Let's forego it. Maybe there was an exclusivity deal attached to it, but generally speaking, when there is an exclusivity deal, a timed exclusivity deal, it's pretty obvious to know. Rise of Ronin, Stellar Blade, all of these games that have a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, of course, these games, it's fairly obvious to realize that they have a timed exclusivity agreement. With Black Myth Wukong, that never felt to be the case. So that's my assessment.
Okay, so he said exactly what I said. Well, he said a lot nicer than what I said. He was, let's say he was more politically correct than what I was, but I was a lot more harsh about it. But no, if Xbox would have been more popular, they would have sat there and made it for the Xbox. But the problem is, the only reason why Xbox is still around is because of their Game Pass, which I still do not understand how they are making the money that they are making. Well, probably because they're selling everything on PC, or they're selling everything on, well, no, because you can get the Game Pass on PC. So that's the reason why that they're bringing them to Sony. They have to make their money somehow. You think that Xbox really cares about the consumer playing everywhere and not just on their console? No. If they could, because you know what? When it came to the Xbox 360, Xbox One, they never released it onto other platforms. They only released it on their platform. But now they're trying to release it everywhere. Then they're like, oh, it's because we want everyone to play our games. No, it's because you need the money. If you didn't have to, you would not be releasing it on PlayStation. Let's be honest about that. You know, you're in the situation you're in because during the Xbox One, you made terrible games. Your games were horrible. Nobody wanted to play them, so everybody was going to PlayStation because PlayStation was coming out with banger after banger after banger. Now, so far for the PS5, they have not been doing that. They made a couple, terrible exclusives. like Godfall, and we'll see the one Forspoken. Them two, terrible. Concord, terrible. But they've also come out with some hits. They have come out with so far more hits than all of Xbox One. But the thing is, Xbox might be back. The old Xbox might be coming back because they have made some very interesting, good games. You had Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, that was a hit. Yeah, Stalker 2, that was a hit. About I don't know if the About was a success, but it still wasn't a bad game. It was still better than anything the Xbox One ever came out with. And then you also had Atomfall. That game's doing phenomenally well. So yeah, I think Xbox is back. I actually am glad because the thing is, even though I'm not a huge Xbox person, I still want Xbox to do well because right now Sony has absolutely no competition. Without competition, you get what Nintendo has. Nintendo has no competition either. Sony and Nintendo are the biggest juggernauts, and people are going to be like, oh, Nintendo's doing way better than Sony. It don't matter. Sony still makes more money. You want to know why? Because they make the AAA games, okay? Nintendo does not release AAA games. Their games are slightly above the indie games. They're not at the same level of AAA games. But that's it for my reaction. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with me or not. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay vigilant.